The Munster Koach was not just a car, it was a fiberglass and steel manifestation of America's monster obsession, a rolling contradiction that merged funeral elegance with hot rod rebellion. Behind its gleaming brass radiator and coffin-shaped body panels lurked a production story filled with impossible deadlines, Hollywood ego clashes, and a car designer pushed to the absolute edge of his creativity. The Koach's birth was as chaotic as the Munster family themselves, built in just 21 days, nearly catching fire during filming and causing a neighborhood evacuation, when its experimental engine backfired with such force that local residents thought a gas line had exploded. Today, we are diving deep into 15 weird facts about the Munster Koach that even die-hard fans do not know. And stick around for our bonus fact, the shocking revelation about what almost replaced the iconic vehicle that would have completely changed television history. So buckle up because this ride through hot rod horror history is about to get wild. Number 15. 3 cars became one. The Munster Koach was not built from scratch. It was Frankenstein's monster on wheels. Legendary car customizer George Barris did not start with a clean slate. He cannibalized 3 separate Model T Fords to create the twisted chassis. Not salvageable bodies, but mangled, rusted frames that other builders had rejected. The production team scoured junkyards across California, desperately seeking pre-1927 Model Ts that could donate their mechanical organs to the project. The final vehicle stretched to an imposing 18 feet long, nearly twice the length of an original Model T. What viewers did not realize was that the car's excessive length was not just for visual impact, it was a necessity born from the actor's costuming. Fred Gwynne's Frankenstein boots and prosthetics required extra legroom, while Al Lewis's vampire cape could not be crumpled against standard seating. The production, designers literally measured the actors in full costume before finalizing dimensions. When Herman Munster first sat in the completed coach, he smiled and said, "It's the first car that doesn't make me feel like I'm wearing it." Number 14. The impossible deadline. The Munster Koach was not leisurely crafted. It was built under the most punishing deadline in television vehicle history. When CBS executives greenlit the show, they initially planned to use a conventional hearse. It was not until 3 weeks before shooting that someone realized the family needed a signature vehicle that would capture their monstrous yet oddly aristocratic nature. George Barris received the frantic call on a Friday afternoon. "We need something iconic, something no one's ever seen, and we need it in 3 weeks. Not 3 months, not 3 seasons. 3 weeks to design, build, test, and deliver a vehicle that would become one of television's most recognizable props." Barris's shop worked around the clock with welders taking catnaps under half-completed chassis between shifts. The pressure was so intense that Barris later claimed he lost 12 pounds during the build and developed an eye twitch that lasted months afterward. The final paint was still wet when the coach arrived on set, with actors sitting on towels to avoid smudging the freshly applied gloss black finish during the first day's shooting. Number 13. A $21,000 price tag in 1964. The Munster Koach was not cheap transportation. It was the most expensive fictional vehicle on television at the time of its creation. While the Batmobile would later surpass it, the Munster Koach's $21,000 construction cost in 1964 translates to roughly $200,000 in today's money for a prop that was not even originally in the show's budget. CBS executives nearly had heart attacks when they saw the bill. Production documents reveal heated exchanges between the network and Barris Custom Industries, with one studio accountant writing, "This is more than we pay some of our actors per season. Please justify this expenditure immediately." Barris responded with a detailed invoice listing the custom brass radiator alone at $1,800. What made the cost even more remarkable was that the network initially only authorized $8,000. When asked how he justified the massive overspend, Barris simply delivered the completed coach to the studio lot unannounced. Once producers saw it gleaming in the California sun, all budget concerns evaporated. As one executive noted in a memo, "The car is the money on screen." Number 12. The blood red upholstery secret. The Munster Koach's interior was not just stylish, it was scandalously impractical. The plush diamond-tufted upholstery that lined the interior was not the black velvet most fans assume from watching the black and white show. It was actually blood red crushed velvet, a color choice that would never be apparent to television viewers but created a nightmare for the crew. The bright California sun would beat down on the set, turning the coach into a rolling oven. The red dye from the upholstery would transfer to the actors' costumes when they sweated, creating visible stains on their wardrobe. Fred Gwynne's white shirt would often have pink splotches by the end of driving scenes, requiring constant costume changes and touch-ups. The velvet also attracted dust from the studio lot, requiring a dedicated crew member whose sole responsibility was maintaining the coach's interior between takes. This person, known on set as the coach cleaner, reportedly quit 3 times during the first season before being given an unprecedented 50% pay raise to deal with what the crew called vampire velvet maintenance. Number 11. The engine that defied physics. The Munster Koach was not just loud, it was scientifically questionable, while promotional materials claimed the vehicle packed a modified 289 Ford Cobra engine. What sat under the hood defied conventional automotive engineering. Barris and his team created a Frankenstein power plant by cobbling together components from 4 different manufacturers, resulting in what they dubbed the Koach 4 carburetor quadrajet. The engine configuration was so unusual that professional mechanics visiting the set would often stand baffled, asking where certain components were and how others could possibly function together. The most outlandish feature was its 10 chromed exhaust pipes, 4 on each side, plus 2 in the center, that were not just for show, they were functional. The sound was so thunderous that outdoor filming required special permits, and several neighbors near the studio filed noise complaints. During one memorable scene, the backfire was so powerful it triggered car alarms 2 blocks away. A Ford engineer who later examined the vehicle reportedly said, "This shouldn't work at all. It's like watching a bumblebee fly, theoretically impossible, but someone forgot to tell the bee." Number 10. The mid-episode engine swap. The Munster Koach you see in early episodes is not the same one you see later. Go ahead and like and subscribe, because we are about to reveal one of television's best-kept automotive secrets. The original engine installed in the Koach was so unreliable that it was completely replaced mid-season without any acknowledgement to viewers. The initial power plant overheated constantly, leaving cast and crew waiting while mechanics frantically worked to cool it down between takes. After one particularly disastrous shooting day, where only 18 seconds of usable footage was captured due to mechanical failures, Barris returned to his shop, ripped out the original engine, and installed a completely different power plant over a single weekend. The replacement was significantly less powerful but infinitely more reliable. Sharp-eyed viewers might notice that in early episodes the Koach's exhaust produces thick, visible smoke, while in later episodes it runs much cleaner. This was not a production choice, it was an emergency fix to keep the show on schedule. As Barris later admitted, the first engine was all show and no go. Sometimes the coolest-looking machines make the worst daily drivers. Number 9. Butch Patrick's driving lessons. Eddie Munster was not just a passenger, he was secretly learning to drive. Butch Patrick, who played the wolf boy child of the Munster family, was only 11 years old during filming. What viewers did not know was that between takes, the young actor would sit behind the wheel of the stationary coach, receiving informal driving lessons from the transportation coordinator. These were not just child's play. The production team had a practical reason. They wanted Patrick comfortable with the vehicle's controls for close-up shots. By the second season, Patrick could competently start the engine, operate the clutch, and even drive the massive vehicle in first gear across the studio lot, albeit only when it was completely empty, and with a crew member ready to grab the building wheel. The young actor later recalled this as one of his favorite memories from the show. "I was probably the only 11-year-old in America who could handle a custom hot rod hearse. The other kids had bicycles, I had the Koach." When Patrick turned 16 and got his actual driver's license, George Barris presented him with a small brass replica of the Koach's distinctive radiator as a congratulatory gift. Number 8. The disappearing door handles. The Munster Koach featured a mysterious design quirk that drove prop masters to distraction. The vehicle had no exterior door handles, a custom touch that looked sleek on camera but created a logistical nightmare during filming. How did the characters enter the vehicle? Through carefully planned camera cuts and strategic editing. Before each driving scene, a crew member would have to open the doors from the inside before filming began. If actors needed to be shown entering the Koach, the camera would cut away at the precise moment they would reach for a handle, then resume showing them already seated inside. This seemingly minor detail required significant choreography during shooting. On several occasions, actors were accidentally locked inside the Koach between takes when the interior handles also malfunctioned. During one memorable incident, the entire cast was trapped inside for nearly 45 minutes, while the transportation team frantically tried to pry the doors open without damaging the custom bodywork. Yvonne DiCarlo, Lily Munster, later joked that being locked in a car with the fully costumed cast on a hot day was like being trapped in a sauna with the Universal Monsters. Number 7. The phantom brake problem. The Munster Koach was not just unusual to look at, it was genuinely dangerous to drive. The custom vehicle suffered from what the transportation crew called phantom braking, an intermittent but terrifying tendency for the brakes to fail completely with no warning. This was not just a minor inconvenience, it was a legitimate safety hazard that required constant vigilance. The issue stemmed from the cobbled-together nature of the braking system, which combined parts from different model years and manufacturers. During the episode Hot Rod Herman, a scene called for Fred Gwynne to drive the Koach at moderate speed and then stop dramatically. What viewers did not see was that the brakes failed completely during filming, forcing Gwynne to swerve off the planned route and use a combination of downshifting and the emergency brake to avoid crashing into camera equipment. After this near disaster, the transportation department installed an additional hidden emergency brake system that only they knew about, accessible under the seat. For the remainder of the series, whenever an actor needed to drive the Koach, a transportation professional would sit out of camera view, ready to activate the secret brake if the main system failed again. Number 6. Stolen by a superfan. The Munster Koach was not always secure. It was actually stolen directly from the studio lot in 1965 in one of Hollywood's most audacious prop thefts. Between filming of episodes 18 and 19 of the second season, the production team arrived one morning to find the coach missing from its designated parking space. Initial assumptions of a practical joke quickly gave way to panic as hours passed with no sign of the irreplaceable vehicle. A frantic call to the police revealed the truth. An obsessed fan had somehow gained access to the studio lot after hours hot-wired the coach and driven it straight through the security gate. The thief was no professional. He was a 19-year-old mechanic's apprentice from Pasadena who simply wanted to take a spin in his favorite TV car. The joyride lasted approximately 3 hours before the vehicle's distinctive appearance made it impossible to hide. Police recovered the coach at a drive-in restaurant where the thief was showing it off to astonished teenagers. The production lost half a day of filming, but remarkably, the vehicle returned undamaged, save for an empty gas tank. The superfan received a surprisingly lenient sentence: probation and a lifetime ban from the studio lot. Number 5. The hidden third seat. The Munster Koach was not just a two-seater, it secretly contained a hidden third seat that was almost never shown on camera. Behind the main passenger compartment, cleverly concealed by the elongated body design, was an additional jump seat specifically designed for Pat Priest and Butch, Patrick Marilyn, and Eddie Munster. This architectural quirk solved a practical problem: how to fit the entire Munster family into the vehicle for driving scenes. The solution was invisible to viewers at home, a fold-down bench that appeared to be part of the rear bodywork. The seat was so uncomfortable that both actors dreaded scenes requiring the full family to drive together. Pat Priest later recalled, "It was like sitting on a medieval torture device. There was no padding, just hard metal covered with thin velvet, and every bump felt like being hit with a hammer." The discomfort explains why so few episodes featured the entire family in the coach simultaneously. When such scenes were unavoidable, shooting schedules were specifically arranged to minimize time in the vehicle, sometimes filming no more than 15 minutes before giving the actors a break from the notorious third seat of suffering. Number 4. Barris's secret signature. The Munster Koach was not just signed by its creator. It contained an elaborate hidden message that went unnoticed for decades. George Barris was known for signing his custom creations, but the coach contained his most elaborate hidden signature ever, one that remained undiscovered until a 1990s restoration. Underneath the passenger seat, invisible to cameras and casual inspection, Barris hand-carved his initials into the wooden seat frame. But that was not all. The initials were part of a complete sentence etched into the wood. "GB was here under impossible deadline, may this car outlive us all." Alongside this message was a carefully carved set of tiny coffins, one for each day of the frantic 21-day build schedule. Each tiny coffin was progressively more detailed, showing Barris's improving technique as the project progressed. When the hidden message was discovered during restoration work in 1998, Barris confirmed its authenticity, explaining, "Every car builder leaves a bit of their soul in a special project. With the coach, I left a message for whoever might find it in the future." The wooden section with the carving was carefully preserved and remains with the vehicle to this day. Number 3. The contested ownership drama. The Munster Koach was not just a prop, it became the center of one of Hollywood's strangest ownership disputes. After the show's cancellation, an extraordinary three-way legal battle erupted between CBS Barris Custom Industries and Universal Studios over who actually owned the vehicle. CBS claimed ownership as they had commissioned and paid for the coach. Barris counterclaimed that the network had only leased his creation for the duration of the show. Meanwhile, Universal Studios, where the show was filmed, argued they had acquired the vehicle as part of broader asset transfers. The dispute dragged on for nearly 2 years, during which the coach sat gathering dust in a storage facility inaccessible to any of the claimants. The legal standoff was finally resolved through an unusual compromise. The parties agreed to shared ownership, with each having specific exhibition rights at different times of year. This arrangement led to the bizarre situation where the coach would physically relocate between different storage facilities every few months, like a child in a custody arrangement. The legal documents from this settlement created a precedent still cited in entertainment law regarding custom prop ownership. As one attorney involved in the case noted, "We basically had to create a car custody agreement for a fictional Munsters vehicle." Number 2. The musical horn that television censors banned. The Munster Koach was not just visually distinct. It originally featured a musical horn that played a funeral dirge, a detail deemed too macabre for 1960s television. The custom-built pneumatic horn system could play the first 8 notes of Chopin's Funeral March, a feature that George Barris was particularly proud of. CBS executives were initially delighted with this morbidly playful touch during early demonstrations. However, when the network's Standards and Practices Department reviewed the completed vehicle, they deemed the funeral funeral music potentially distressing to younger viewers, and inappropriately death-focused for family programming. The horn was disconnected before filming began, but not removed. In an act of subtle rebellion, the transportation department would occasionally reconnect it between takes, allowing cast and crew to enjoy the forbidden feature during breaks. Fred Gwynne was reportedly so amused by the horn that he would sit in the parked coach playing it repeatedly until producers asked him to stop. The original horn mechanism remains installed in the restored vehicle, although it no longer functions. As Barris later commented, that horn was pure Munster dark humor that some people just didn't get. Number 1. The literal blood, sweat, and tears. The Munster Koach was not just built with metal and fiberglass, it contained actual blood, sweat, and tears literally. The frantic construction schedule led to numerous workshop accidents, leaving permanent marks of its human creators embedded within the vehicle itself. During the brass radiator's creation, a metalworker sliced his hand deeply on sharp brass edging. Rather than stopping to seek medical attention and risk missing the deadline, he wrapped his hand and continued working. Blood seeped through the bandage and mixed with the solder joining two radiator sections, a macabre detail invisible to viewers but known to the construction team. In another incident, a woodworker crafting the dashboard accidentally hammered his thumb, causing a tear to fall directly onto the unvarnished wood. Rather than sanding it out, he incorporated the tear stain into the finish as a permanent part of the coach's story. The most literal interpretation came from George Barris himself, who worked so intensely during the final 48 hours that his perspiration dripped directly into the paint mixture for the firewall. As he later told Hot Rod magazines, "That car has more of me in it than any other. I've built blood, sweat, tears, and probably a few years off my life." Bonus fact: the Munster Koach was not just ahead of its time visually, it nearly became the world's first electric hot rod decades before Tesla made electric vehicles cool. What almost no one knows is that the original design called for an experimental electric drive system that would have made television history. George Barris initially partnered with a UCLA engineering professor to create an electric drive system for the coach. The concept was revolutionary for 1964, a nearly silent monster car that would ironically be more environmentally friendly than any other vehicle on television. Prototype components were actually built and tested with early results showing promising performance. The electric system was abandoned just 9 days before the deadline when persistent battery overheating issues could not be resolved in time. The conventional engine was hastily substituted, and the electric components were disassembled. Only 3 people knew how close the coach came to making automotive history as an electric vehicle: Barris, the professor, and a CBS executive who had championed the idea. The original electrical schematics remained in Barris's personal archives until his death, labeled simply Munster Koach, the silent version. Had the technology of the time been slightly more advanced, the Munster family might have been driving the world's first famous electric hot rod nearly 60 years before such vehicles became mainstream. If you have enjoyed this drive-through custom car history, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe for more hidden Hollywood history, and tell us in the comments which iconic TV or movie vehicle you want us to explore next. Until then, remember what Herman Munster always said about the Koach: it's the only car that makes ME feel normal.